It's time for the 2025 Tomato Breeding Projects video. For the 2025 growing season, I grew some F1s all the way up to an F10. In fact, I selected for 24 lines of F2s this year. I was not anticipating to select for that many lines. It was very exciting and a lot of fun. In fact, I find the F2 generation to be the most fun. Why? Well, the F2 generation is very highly unstable. This is exciting to me. In other words, this is where we see segregation. We will see a wide range of genetic diversity with lots of phenotypes. This is critical because the breeder now will be responsible for selecting. In actuality, selection is perpetual, but it's very critical on this generation. We will see both dominant and recessive traits. The larger quantity of plants you grow, the more higher odds you will see the recessive traits. For me, I grow 300 up to 600 tomatoes. That's about all I can handle personally. And so I have a fair amount of odds of seeing those recessive traits. Also this season, I identified a few F1 hybrids that the bees performed for me. And let's be honest, sometimes the best crosses are made by Mother Nature and not from our own works. As I delve into the 2025 projects, I recommend going back and watching my 2024 video and watching this in sequence. The weather for planting this spring was pretty decent. We did not get flooded out like last year, so the soil was nice and dry and pleasant to work with. Hardening off was quite challenging as there were no cloudy days and full sun. Enjoy the beauty of the harvest, the beautiful genetic diversity. This is a great pick-me-up at the end of a long, long winter. This year, my Minnesota Icicle variety is at the F10 stage. Here we are out on the field, looking at some nice coloration here. Really nice dark anthocyanin coloring, brick red exterior when ripe. This variety at F10 is pretty stable. Occasionally, it will throw out a more plump shape. However, I continue to select for the more slender icicle shape. The tomato on the left is incorrect, and the one on the right is correct. And a few more examples of the correct shape that I am selecting for. The full history of this variety is discussed in the 2024 Breeding Projects video. Sometimes I even get conjoined icicles. Project number 9 was at F9 this year. It's a great variety, highly ribbed and fluted, red and orange striped, and very stunning when sliced open. Classic tomato flavor, great for fresh eating as well as sauce. I still need a name for this variety. So far, my only idea is Blaze of Glory. If you have any creative ideas, please leave a comment and help me out. Going from oldest to youngest, let's move on to some F4s. Project number 35, Yellow Solid. It was at F4 this year, and boy, this is one of my favorites. It is a top performer. It is early, prolific, and the texture is oh so creamy. For an F4, this is actually pretty stable. The only thing I'm selecting for at this point is proper shape. I am selecting out the perfectly round globe-shaped fruits, and I am selecting for the more squat or bell-shaped fruits. I'm hoping to have this worked out by the F8, but time will tell. The maternal parent was named Early Sabacus aliana. It was also a top performer for me, which explains the great characteristics of the offspring. Because this is such a top performer for me, once I get this stabilized, I may use it for future crosses and future breeding. Next we have the sibling. This is the 35 Yellow Striped. The only difference here is that it has striping on it. It actually starts out as a faint green stripe, and it ripens to a golden stripe. From this original cross, I selected 4 lines. The Yellow Solid, the Yellow Striped. We also will have a red striped and a red solid. In my opinion, the solid yellow is superior to the striped yellow. For this reason, I do grow a larger quantity of the solid. The third sibling from the 35 project is a red striped. There is also a solid red sibling, which I am slowly phasing out. I find the 35 red striped to be superior in flavor. You can see the shape is different than the yellow solid. It is not a bell shape, but rather more of a plump, elongated type. Not only is it attractive, it still has the early and prolific nature as the yellow sibling. The flavor is comparable to an old-time, acidic red beefsteak. Of course, it's in a much smaller package. Let's move from an F4 to an F3. This is project number 33, F3 fruit. The female parent is my project number 9, and the male parent is Angora orange. I culled several lines from this cross, and this was the only one that I retained. It has decent flavor, and the foliage and fruit are fuzzy. I think I will bring it to F4 this year, but on a small scale. My first F2 to evaluate is project number 26. I selected 2 lines from this cross. On the bottom, you see a pastel orange elongated fruit. On the top, a more dark-hued, orange, and globe-shaped. The mother parent is Burpee's Jubilee, and the father parent is Mila. The dark orange offspring was prone to cracking. The pastel elongated offspring was unremarkable. Of course, when we make a cross, we are hoping that the offspring will be superior or better than the parents. But sometimes the offspring, or the segregants that we see here in the F2, are actually inferior than the parents. Keep in mind that tomatoes are inbreeding, and they do not suffer from inbreeding depression. Likewise, we may not see much hybrid vigor. Although it is disappointing, sometimes we choose to cull a variety. I will not bring project number 26 to the F3. If I choose to do anything with it, what I will do is regrow the F1 seed and back cross that to the male parent. I will likely not take the time to do that back cross this year. The reason is I have so many wonderful and exciting F2s that did turn out great, so I will be spending time on those instead. This is breeding project number 36. Now, most of the 36s I didn't like and I'm not going to progress with, but this one particular plant is quite unique in that it's square shaped in a cherry format. And what I really like about it is the texture. The texture is so thick, smooth, and creamy that for a cherry, it would actually make a good sauce tomato, which is very much what I'm after since I do make a lot of sauces. So come in and take a close look at this. It really stood out to me. It's quite unique. You can see that it's, a rather large red cherry. It's kind of growing in a truss, and it's a very square shape. Some of them almost have a little bit of a harder, a very slight nipple tip to it. Most of them are square shaped, and it ripens to a nice bright red. Let's take a look at another spot here. Here's a nice example down low here to the ground. Again, you can see them growing in a nice truss formation. Typically, they're going to ripen from the top down. I'm going to go ahead and pick one here. So I was just pleasantly surprised with this one. Let's go ahead and pick another one. Very impressed with it. I believe this is the only plant in the entire, batch that I have here. I grow hundreds of tomatoes of this particular one. So I've been very good to save the seeds of this. I'm going to definitely progress with this one next year. So this project number 36 was a really neat one. The mother is Aunt Lou's Underground Railroad, and the father is, well, unknown. Funny thing is, the permanent marker on my label had faded in the sun, so although I did the cross, I don't remember which one was the father. There were 2 lines from this cross. The first was a juicy pink cherry, which I am culling. The sibling, which I am calling 36 Red Square for now, was exceptional. I love the vibrant red color, the truss growth format. And I like the texture of it. We might have a cherry tomato that is actually excellent for sauce. Project number 32 F2. I only selected one line from this cross. I imagine it is quite recessive as I only had one or maybe two plants total in my field. The mother is Sweetheart Cherry, and the father is Boxcar Willie. An important consideration that I learned from Carol Deppe's book is the importance of choosing the maternal parent. Not only does the mother contribute 1/2 nuclear genes, she also contributes mitochondrial and chloroplast genes from the organelles in the cytoplasm. It was much more difficult to use Sweetheart Cherry as the mother plant because the flowers were so tiny and delicate. Plus, I had very few F1 seeds. I think it was worth it. The offspring is rather unique. I've never had a cherry tomato that is dry and semi-hollow. Project number 17, this is the F1, which I loved. I selected 10 lines from the F2s, but I will not be proceeding with all 10. The parents were Aunt Lou's Underground Railroad crossed with a green bell. This segregant I am calling 17 F2 White. Yes, I am shocked. I have a white beefsteak tomato from this cross. It's likely recessive as I only had one plant in the entire field. While I don't usually grow a lot of beefsteaks, my husband actually really liked this variety. Here's his opinion.
It's got a real mild texture that is got a real nice deep tomato flavor. A little bit watery, but still really a good tomato tasting.
My husband rarely comments on liking tomatoes, so I best keep this one going. Another 17 F2. I'm calling this one Yellow Stripe. The skin is thick and it has an excellent shelf life. The fruiting was prolific. If you pick the fruit early, it's a neon yellow color like this. If you let it ripen fully, it turns to a golden yellow. Mostly I picked them somewhere in the middle ground, like here. The next 17 sibling is Solid Yellow Round. This one is a more vibrant yellow color, and the exterior almost looks shiny or glossy. Sliced open, the interior looks like a typical beefsteak tomato. For some reason, yellow tomatoes perform very well in my climate. I'll take a few of these into the F3. The next 17 F2 is called Yellow Square. Again, it's a beautiful yellow color. The shape is square instead of round. This is a trait that I am breeding for. The big question here is, what is the interior? Will it be solid like a beefsteak or semi-hollow? Drumroll, and the answer is solid like a beefsteak. A bit disappointing to me as I am breeding for semi-hollow. On these close-up photos, you can see more clearly faint striping on that yellow skin. I will bring a few of these into F3. This 17 F2 is just like the F1 hybrid fruit, and I really liked the F1, so I will definitely continue this one on into F3. It's an attractive, classic tomato type. This 17 F2 is really cool. I'm calling it Chocolate Bell for now. You can see the very pretty chocolate exterior color, and the shape is very square and very blocky, much like a bell pepper. There was one single plant in my entire field of this variety, and it was hidden, so it could have been lost forever. Looking at the interior, it is also very attractive. I just love that blocky shape. A definite win for me, and definitely bringing this into F3. This is the last number 17 line that I'm sharing, and it's my favorite. I'm calling it Olive Green. It has the square shape that I want, and beautiful green and golden coloring. Unfortunately, the interior is not semi-hollow like I want, but nonetheless, I really like the flavor of green when ripe tomatoes. I only had 2 plants in my field of this line. I will bring quite a few of these into F3. Moving on to project number 25 and all of its segregants, This is the F1 25 from last year, which I absolutely loved. If I could keep it at that F1, I would, but I want an open pollinated, stable variety. The maternal parent was Mila, and the father was a green bell. Segregant number 1, I'm calling 25 orange. At first glance, it looks like a pretty unremarkable orange tomato. However, we had a night with 5 inches of rain, and it did not split or crack, whereas all the 26 orange tomatoes did split and crack. So that is definitely worth something. I will take a small amount into the F3. Next is number 25 F2, yellow lemon. And yep, you guessed it, it looks like a yellow lemon. It's pretty, but the texture is more watery compared to my 35. My number 35 yellow is so much creamier. But looking at the vine, it is quite attractive to look at. Certainly, this is all the lemon that I can grow in Minnesota. Here I have a red solid elongated from 25. It really reminds me of the tomato Pink Fang, if you've ever tried that one. It's nice and meaty and dry, which would make a good sauce, but the flavor was just so-so. And here's another sibling just like it, only this one has stripes. Both of these siblings, I would say, are fine for sauce, but not for fresh eating. 25 orange stripe. It's a pretty attractive tomato, two-toned orange striping. I think it was pretty productive, but I don't recall much about the flavor. I will take a few into the F3. This 25 line is a keeper. I really liked it. It was extremely prolific. Beautiful yellow color, elongated paste shape, not too juicy, great for sauce. But it's not just for sauce. I actually liked the flavor for fresh eating as well. I was pleasantly surprised with this one, and it much outperformed the red solid elongated sibling. Lucy, one of my cats, enjoys hanging out in the tomatoes with me. She's pretty good company, and apparently she wants to guard my bowl of tomatoes. These F2 years are definitely full of surprises. So here's another 25, F2 again, but this I'm calling Chocolate Roma. I swear this 25, I've had every color, striped and non-striped, under the sun with this particular cross. Very surprised on this one. The 25 Chocolate Roma, I'm kind of undecided because I didn't love the flavor on this one. Here's one of my 25 lines. Now remember last year, the 25 F1 was one of my favorites, if not my favorite last year. So I grew a lot of 25s. And I'm finding also the most diversity with those 25s. So this is one of the F2s. This one I'm calling a Flame Roma. So it's kind of an elongated Roma shape with a red and orange flame striping on it here. Very attractive. Mid to late maturity so far is what I'm seeing. So these seeds will be F3 seeds. Let's go ahead and cut one open and see what the interior looks like. All right. And of course, to seed save, we will be squeezing out those seeds. And I'm going to taste test a little piece of that. Okay. The skin is slightly thick, but not too thick where it's, not good. I think it'll make a good sauce. I'll find out when I put it through my rubber. But I do feel like the interior isn't overly juicy. It's more thick and will make a good paste. So I approve. I will be carrying this one forward into the F3. Also check out this really neat little conjoined tomato here. I believe this is probably also a 25 Roma type. Just kind of interesting how this is conjoined. It looks like about 6 tomatoes here that all fuse together into a conjoined manner. Thought this one was rather unique. I do get some odd fruits and vegetables. I thought this one in particular was quite unique. Kind of fun. The 25 Flame Roma is definitely a winner. They're a bit late to ripen, but it's worth the wait. I will grow several into F3. Check out this cool one. So this came from 25 line again. And there's only one plant that I could find with this particular traits here, with this phenotype. So you can see that it's red elongated. And the shape of this, you can see from the parent Myla. So it's got the exact same shape as the Myla parent, with that long tapered neck. Only we have red striping on this. Very cool looking. So these are the only three fruits that I have at this time. Like I said, I have one plant out of like 300 plus, so definitely pretty recessive here. So again, it looks very similar to the Myla parent. I'm not surprised on the interior there. I definitely want to make sure to get these seeds because I have so very few of this. This kind of reminds me of when I was selecting for my Minnesota Icicle tomato. I had a really hard time finding that elongated icicle shape that I wanted. I had to grow many, many plants to get that shape. And again, this one is obviously pretty rare as well. I'll just take one small bite here. Yeah, I like the flavor. The flavor of this is definitely a win. Finally, a tomato that's not so mild. Definitely has a more strong flavor, so I approve of that one. This number 25, Flame Elongated, is my favorite of the 25s. I think the olive green F2 sibling is second place. This one has nearly all the traits that I wanted. The shape, specifically an elongated neck, striped coloring, and a nice strong flavor. The only trait that I did not achieve is a larger size. Overall, I'd say that's pretty good for an F2. I have a very limited supply of the F3 seeds, so I will be sure to grow out lots of them for the 2026 summer. Lastly, I would like to share some fun and exciting F1s that I discovered this year. All of these F1 hybrids were not crosses that I made, but rather were likely made by honeybees. When an accidental cross occurs, the important thing is to identify said F1 hybrid. Some great crosses can come from Mother Nature. This first F1 I'm calling Yellow Bell. It looks a lot like number 17 Yellow Square. However, once you cut into it, you can see that the interior is actually, hallelujah, it's a semi-hollow. Exactly what I wanted. I'm looking forward to the F2 in 2026. This F1 fruit is a red striped pear, larger than a cherry, but smaller than a saladette. The maternal parent is green pear tomato. Being that this is an insect cross, we don't know the father, but it is fun to make some guesses. The exterior has faint orange striping and the interior is red. The flavor really appealed to me and I found myself going back for seconds. This last F1 I'm calling Bronze Striped Bell. It reminds me a lot of Violet Jasper that I grew years ago. I think I will grow some F2s of this one this year to see what the segregants are. Despite the fact that it was very late maturing, I'm very curious about this, and I like my square tomatoes. I hope you enjoyed the 2025 projects that I shared. This weekend I will be starting my tomato seeds for the 2026 growing season. I'm hoping to do some more tomato crosses this year, as well as some squash breeding. I'm also growing a pepper F1 from last year's cross. If you enjoy this content, be sure to subscribe and leave a comment. Cheers to a good gardening season.